It's Slovenia time, boys.
Hola.
24 litrov.
Pa se je za Švico ful.
Now, since I was born and grew up in this small European country, I think the only right thing to do is to show you guys the history of Slovenia. For all geographically challenged people, Slovenia is a small European country situated on the border of Central and Western Europe and the Balkan Peninsula. It holds around 2.1 million people, with the capital city being Ljubljana. Officially, the country exists for only 34 years since the breakup of Yugoslavia, but the history stretches all the way back to a time when people banged rocks together for fun, to where we will also travel today. Without further ado, let's stop wasting your time and get straight into the main topic of the video. Our journey begins around 250,000 years ago, during the Paleolithic period or the Old Stone Age. You see, a lot older than just 34 years. Now, during this era, Neanderthals roamed Europe, and traces of their activities have been found in caves across Slovenia, like the Divje Babe, Potočka Zijalka and Betalov Spod Mol. For all the people with nationalistic tendencies, it is important to mention that these were not ancestors of modern-day Slovenes. I think they were more focused on survival rather than creating nations. But let's stay on the main topic. While exploring caves across Slovenia, archaeologists found various stone and bone tools and weapons used by these early humans. One quite remarkable find is a cave bear femur bone, shaped into what is known today as a flute, dating back 50 to 60,000 years. This simple flute is considered today to be the world's oldest musical instrument found until this day. Over the next thousands of years, Homo sapiens migrated into Europe around 40,000 years ago, leading to the disappearance of Neanderthals either through interbreeding or complete extinction. Unlike their predecessors, these modern humans hunted smaller animal herds and moved their temporary shelters depending on the season. This lifestyle continued for a long time until the Neolithic Revolution around the 7th millennium BC, which brought agriculture from Asia Minor into Europe. This change introduced farming and stability, turning some temporary shelters into permanent ones. Some examples of these Neolithic European cultures are the Vinča, Starčevo and Koros cultures, being one of the earliest on the continent. Later, the introduction of copper led early people to transition from stone and bone tools to more durable materials. During this period, various cultures inhabited the territory of modern-day Slovenia. One of the more notable ones was the pile-dwelling culture, being more prevalent near the Alps, which also included parts of present-day Slovenia. These early dwellers built their homes on stilts over lakes, rivers and marshes, including the Ljubljana marshes. Here they discovered a wooden wheel with a radius of around 70 centimeters and a thickness of about 5 centimeters, alongside with a 120 centimeter long wheel axle. Radiocarbon dating suggests the wheel to be around 5,200 years old, making it the oldest wooden wheel ever discovered, predating those found in Switzerland, Germany and Mesopotamia. Archaeologists believe that it was used on a push and pull cart, although the exact shape of a cart is left to our imagination. At some point in history, someone added tin to existing copper, creating more durable metal, bronze. This innovation marked the beginning of the Bronze Age. During this period, the Indo-European migration occurred, spreading new lifestyles throughout Eurasia and significantly altering European cultures and traditions. In the late Bronze Age, the urn-filled culture, known for cremating the dead and storing ashes in urns, emerged. Evidence of this culture has also been found in modern-day Slovenia. This culture marked the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, a gradual shift evidenced by the coexistence of bronze artifacts during the early Iron Age. At the same time, we can also see the rise of the famous Hallstatt culture, famous for its salt mines, farming and superb metalworking skills. Divided into 4 main periods marked with the letters from A to D, Hallstatt culture spans from the late Bronze Age to the Classical Age. During this period, modern-day Slovenia was home to Proto-Illyrian and other native tribes. A significant number of situlas were found in Slovenia from this period, including the famous Vaška situla from around 500 BC. The artifact features depictions of warriors, ritual combat, and animals, likely being influenced by the early Etruscan tribes living close to this region. One fun fact: the horse rider you can see being depicted on the top of the situla is now featured in Slovenian passports and ID cards. Pretty cool. By the end of the Hallstatt period, around the 4th and 3rd centuries BC, Celtic tribes began settling in modern-day Slovenia. A bit later, at around 200 BC, these tribes formed their own confederation called the Kingdom of Noricum. It included 13 Celtic tribes ruled by a single ruler or by multiple on special occasions. Closing in at the end of the 1st century BC, our good old friends the Romans came around and took over the Kingdom of Noricum, converting it into a Roman province at around 15 BC. This province included parts of modern-day Austria and Slovenia, although some Slovenian regions were incorporated into other Roman provinces like the 10th region of Italy and the province of Pannonia. While in control, the Romans established the first military bases and cities on Slovenian soil, known as colonies such as Emona, Celea and Poetovio. They also connected the province of Noricum to the main body of the empire with military and merchant roads, whose remains can still be seen in some Slovenian cities and towns. Unfortunately, everybody knows what eventually happened to Rome. By the 3rd century, Germanic tribes frequently raided Rome's eastern border as the empire weakened. Some tribes sought plunder, while others fled nomadic warriors from the Eurasian steppe. By the 4th and 5th centuries, now divided Roman Empire had to accept some of these tribes to help defend against the Huns, led by their famous warrior king Attila. Rome was partially relieved of constant pressure after the death of Attila in 453. But the Western Roman Empire was already on the brink of collapse. The fall was a slow process influenced by centuries of changing laws, internal corruption, and external pressures, including these invasions. Unable to defend itself, Rome finally fell in 476 AD, which is the date historians commonly mark as the empire's collapse. After the fall of Western Rome, Germanic-speaking people looked towards the west, leaving behind abandoned and empty lands. Since the migration was a very popular trend at that time, numerous Slavic tribes decided to follow this trend, native to the Vistula-Dnieper region, and probably because they were kind of exposed to invasions from the east. Slavic tribes started migrating into different directions, with some of them crossing the Carpathian Mountains, which is the most accepted South Slavic migration theory today. Some crossed the Danube River south of the Carpathians, settling deep in the Balkans and even reaching Asia Minor. But for today, we will only focus on the northern part of southeastern Europe, where Eastern Alpine Slavs settled in the area close to the Alps. These Eastern Alpine Slavs are considered today as the ancestors of modern Slovenes, where they settled in parts of Austria and Slovenia. Now, soon after settling in the region, they faced a new danger coming from the east: the Avars. Unable to push back the invaders on their own, they joined forces with some Western Slavic tribes under the leadership of a mysterious merchant named Samo. Under his leadership, these tribes formed a union known today as Samos Tribal Union or Samos Kingdom. Very original. Established between 622 and 626 AD, they successfully pushed out the invading Avars and, while Samo was still in control, turned west and defeated the Frankish kingdom in 631. Things were looking pretty good at this point, but when the merchant Samo died in 658, the tribal union collapsed. The Avars, spectating from afar, took this opportunity to attack again, putting some independent Slavic tribes back under Avar rule, like the Carniolans. But some tribes further north were shielded by their occupied cousins, which led them to regroup like they did in Samos kingdom, although on a much smaller scale. Karantania, one of the earliest Slavic states, emerged in the 7th century, which was ruled by noblemen known as knezi. Basically the same function as kings in other parts of Europe. The capital was near the Austrian city of Klagenfurt, where they also enthroned their leaders in a unique enthronement ceremony which involved sitting on the Knežji Kamen or Prince's Stone, a broken piece of an old Roman pillar. Now you have to understand that Karantania's independence was constantly threatened by the Avars, which led to their noblemen searching for aid from the Bavarian dukes, but only under one condition: to accept Christianity. They agreed when the Karantanian Knez Borut sent his son and his nephew Gorazd and Hotimir to be converted. It is very important to mention here that they were still almost fully independent during this time, but everything would change with the arrival of one guy named Charlemagne. He took control over Bavaria in 788, establishing a more stable border between the Franks and the Avars. This meant more Frankish influence in the region, which the natives didn't want to accept. And after Charlemagne's death in 814, they started an uprising against the Frankish influence under Ludewit Posawski, with a lot of Karantanian noblemen joining him. In 828, the uprising was extinguished by the Franks, which meant no more independence for the rebels. Frankish feudal system was introduced, and Frankish dukes were appointed as the region's leaders, like the Duchy of Carinthia, where part of modern-day Slovenia is located. In the 10th century, a new player was in town: Hungarians. They pressured the eastern borders, clashing with Franks and occupying parts of today's Slovenia for about half a century. After losing their lands, now newly formed Kingdom of Germany, how it came to that is a long story, defeated Hungarians in 955 and reclaimed their lands. During the same time, at around 1000 AD, the famous Freising manuscripts or Brižinski spomeniki were released, the oldest Slavic writings in Latin. Later, Slovenian territory was passed between different noble houses for a while, eventually coming under the rule of the famous inbred Habsburgs. The next couple of centuries were quite chaotic and confusing, so just be prepared. Some local lords of Sanek, or in Slovenian Žovnek, sided with Habsburgs in the Battle of Marchfeld, consequently becoming their vassals in 1308. After some confusing medieval marital agreements, the dynasty acquired some estates of Celje in 1333, and 8 years later they got the title of Counts of Celje. Their power peaked when Count Hermann II saved the life of King Sigismund of Hungary. After he became the Holy Roman Emperor, he gave them the title of Princes of the Holy Roman Empire. The last Count of Celje, Ulrich II, after some chaotic events once more, ambitiously tried to control Hungary, Bohemia and Austria, making a lot of enemies along the way. His decisions eventually led to his assassination in Belgrade in 1456, marking the end of their dynasty. After his death, their lands fell under Habsburg control once more. But even after the death of their dynasty, the Counts of Celje are considered the most powerful medieval family in modern-day Slovenia. I tried to shorten it as much as I can, for your sanity. Now we arrived at the time of Ottoman invasions into Europe. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, the age of peasant revolts began on Slovenian territory. The arrival of the Ottomans, constant wars between noble families, and higher taxes imposed by feudal lords and the church led to unrest amongst the common people. All these factors put a lot of pressure on farmers and workers, resulting in a 250-year-long period of peasant revolts. There were 5 major revolts in Slovenia and neighboring states, with around 140 smaller ones eventually suppressed by the royal armies. But we have to understand that there was still no sense of national identity at this point. People identified themselves with their royal family's coat of arms rather than nationality. The first ignited spark of national identity between the Slovene population came when people started questioning legitimacy of the church. With Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation started spreading across the continent. Some Slovenian theologists started writing the first books written in early form of Slovene language, like Primož Trubar, who was responsible for the first 2 Slovenian books, Catechism and Abecednik. Juri Dalmatin was responsible for translating the Bible to Slovene language, which further strengthened their sense of national identity. You see, we are slowly getting there. In the 18th century, during a new philosophical movement in Europe called the Enlightenment, Slovenian territories were still under Habsburg control. A lot of important events took place during this period. For instance, when Maria Theresia and her son Joseph II reformed the school system, making education mandatory for all social classes. This gave the Slovenian population another boost to their sense of national identity with the development of Slovene language, even though German was still an official language in schools and Slovene was somewhat banned or prohibited in public institutions. Now, closing in at the end of the 18th century, a revolution was happening in France. But not just any kind of revolution. The kind where people started questioning if they even need a king. Economy was getting worse, while common people were working harder. You know where this is going. They beheaded a lot of people, and King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette were included. But one small dude from Corsica, with huge ambitions and being very popular, came around just in time. Napoleon. After the War of the Fifth Coalition, he reorganized some territories in Europe, creating new administrative units like the Illyrian provinces, and part of present-day Slovenia was included. They weren't long-lasting though, because after European powers defeated Napoleon, these all broke down. Although they lasted just long enough for people to get an idea of nationalism and growing sense of national identity. After Napoleon's defeat, the 19th century saw the rise of a new political ideology amongst Slavic people, Pan-Slavism, which focused on joining all Slavic countries under one rule. It was especially popular among South Slavic countries, oppressed by powerful monarchies, the Ottomans, and still lacking independence. Some of the most influential Slovenian public figures were present during this period, with the likes of Matija Čop and France Prešeren, who is today considered as the best Slovenian writer, releasing the song Zdravljica, which is used today as a Slovenian national anthem. But tensions in Europe closing in at the end of the 19th century were at an all-time high, with World War I starting in 1914 as a result. Slovenia under Austro-Hungarian control saw its bloodiest battles at the Isonzo front or Soška fronta, where thousands of Slovenian soldiers died. At the end of the war, Slovenia joined other nations in declaring independence from Austro-Hungarian Empire. After that, South Slavic countries decided to form the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, later renamed it to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. During the interwar period, Slovenia was flourishing economically and culturally. However, with another world war around the corner, everything would change. In 1939, World War II broke out, causing chaos across Europe. Kingdom of Yugoslavia initially held its ground, but was eventually invaded by the Axis forces. On April 6, 1941, Slovenia fell into the hands of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy and Hungary. Soon after, on April 26 the same year, Slovenians formed the Liberation Front or Osvobodilna Fronta to resist the invading forces. One day later, Slovenians celebrate a national holiday for uprising against occupation. 2 years later, the Communist Party of Slovenia took over the Liberation Front, and in October, the Assembly of the Delegates or Kočevski Zbor decided to join the Yugoslav partisans. After the war, some independent South Slavic states decided to create the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia. Following the post-war era, Yugoslavia initially modeled itself after the Soviet Union, but chose to be neutral and even started their own path with socialism. The famous Tito-Stalin split was the final nail in the coffin for their relationship, which led to the renaming of the country to Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. In the next couple of decades, Slovenia continued with its industrial expansion, exporting 1/5 of all Yugoslavian-made products, becoming one of the more important states for Yugoslavian economy. In 1980, Josip Broz Tito, the creator of Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, died, leading to more and more political instability and economic decline. For the next decade, things were going south fast, and more countries wanted independence. On December 23, 1990, a vote took place in Slovenia, with 88.2% of the voters choosing independence. 3 days later, the vote was made official, which is celebrated today as a national holiday. Next year, on June 25th, 1991, Slovenia declared independence from Yugoslavia, sparking a 10-day war, which ended on July 7th the same year with the signing of the Brioni Agreement, and the last Yugoslavian soldier left Slovenia peacefully in October of 1991. And finally, we are here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. New one is coming soon, but until then, stay safe, stay educated, and until next time, boys!